take me for a walk.
And welcome to this week's edition of Twin Peaks Unwrapped. I'm your host, Bryon Kazaska, and beside me, as always,
Ben Durant.
Ben, guess what?
What?
We have an awesome show today.
We have an awesome show.
I know, every week we have an awesome show, but this show is awesomer.
We have Charlotte Stewart, a.k.a. Mrs. Briggs, on the show today.
It's so cool that she
cool.
came on our show.
Yeah. So, like, June 1st, her new book comes out. It's a memoir. We get to talk to her a little bit about it.
Twin Peaks, David Lynch.
Eraserhead.
It's so cool.
So
Some of the
cool.
stories
Yeah.
she tells us.
And I'm actually really excited to get her book. And she'll be at the Great Southern, and maybe she'll sign copies of her book.
Yeah. So without further ado.
All right, we're on the phone with Charlotte Stewart, and she's got a new book coming out on June 1st, Little House in the Hollywood Hills, A Bad Girl's Guide to Becoming Miss Beadle, Mary X, and Me. Hi, Charlotte.
Hi. Hi, guys. How you doing?
Great. So, yeah, you're only a few weeks away from your book coming out.
I know. It's unbelievable. I mean, it seemed like it was never going to happen. Then all of a sudden, it's like in a couple of weeks.
That's awesome. You know what's so impressive? I went to IMDb. You have over 71 credits as an actress in TV and film. You've had over 50 years in film and television. Like, what a great career you've had.
I've been extremely lucky. My first job on the air was I was 19 years old, right out of school, and it never stopped.
And that's something. So you meant to write a book. I mean, you
Yeah,
had 50 years. I mean, the time is now. So it's so exciting.
Well, I'm glad you think so, because it never occurred to me to do it until my friend Andy Demsky, who wrote the book with me. He actually guided me along the way. You know, he kind of, kicked me in the butt and said, "You've got to write a book." And I finally believed him. So there it is, out there.
And there's so much. I mean, I was looking at the list and it's like there's so many things I could talk about, and this is mostly a Twin Peaks podcast, but I think we can talk about a little bit everything that.
Wow, good.
Yeah. So I could start off with saying Neil Young has a quote that says, "I didn't know Miss Beadle knew so much about sex, drugs, and rock and roll."
God bless his heart.
And you were part of a movie. In 1982, Neil Young released a film that he co-directed, co-wrote, and starred in, Human Highway. And you were in that movie.
Human Highway,
Yeah.
That's correct.
And it's like, it looks so good. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm really intrigued and I want to see it. And
Well, you should. I think it's available on YouTube, although the latest edition is the best one out. And I'm not sure which one is on YouTube, but he's tinkered with it for, 25 years or so, or maybe more. I think it is more, looking at the date. But it was a love of his. He just loved it. It's a nuclear comedy about the last day on Earth. And it stars Devo and Neil and Dennis Hopper and a whole bunch of other guys that you're probably too young to know about, but they're terrific.
And Russ Tamblyn, who is Jacoby in Twin Peaks, he was in that movie as well, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. And he's going to be at the Twin Peaks Festival in August.
That's awesome.
As I will.
Yeah.
So are you going to be there?
I don't think we're going to be able to make it. We will be going to the Great Southern in a few weeks.
Yes, we're going to see you there.
Of course.
Yeah. And so in February, you actually did do a panel or a question and answer with Neil Young and about Human Highway, right?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. Cameron Crowe, the director, had a Q&A live in 400 theaters after they ran a show of Human Highway. And I hadn't seen Neil in quite a while, but I was actually at the South by Southwest with him last year for Human Highway and also in the Toronto Film Festival. So he's been pushing it pretty good, but it's a very nostalgic piece and it's really funny.
Yeah. What was it like working with him? What was it like having him direct you?
Well, I've known Neil since he was a puppy. I met Neil in the early 70s. I was friends with his manager, and I had a clothing store in the same building where Neil's manager was, held his office. So it was right across from Elektra Records. So I had a lot of, rock guys coming in and out of the building and stopping by my store. It was called the Liquid Butterfly. And if you remember one of Neil's earlier album covers, it's the back of his pants with a whole bunch of patches on it.
Yeah.
That's what we did in my clothing stores. We patched guys' pants.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
That's how old I am.
So part of the title of your book is A Bad Girl's Guide From everything I've seen of you as your characters you've played, and even the interviews you've done, I've never thought of you as a bad girl or quote bad girl.
Well, that's what I said. You're too young to remember those. No, I actually thought it would be a good draw for the book.
Yeah.
But I do go into, have you seen my book yet?
I've seen the cover and the back. I mean, I've gone to the website and I've looked at it on Amazon.
I'm going to have a copy with me. In fact, I'm going to be signing books at the bookstore there in Richmond, Virginia. So
Nice.
Maybe you'll get a chance to read it and find out how bad a girl I was.
I was actually thinking of probably picking it up there because they'll probably have copies that'll be out. So I'll probably pick it up.
They did.
Yeah.
They ordered it.
So you also, I mean, you're well known for Little House on the Prairie, and
Yes.
How was that experience working with Michael Landon? And you actually also was in one episode of Highway to Heaven as well.
Yeah, I was, and it meant a lot that Michael, remembered me and asked me to play a part in Highway to Heaven. It was a two-parter, and it was a really nice show. Michael was a terrific guy to work for. He was funny and he was irreverent and he liked to play tricks on everybody, and yet he ruled that show with a firm hand. You even the children, you came on time, you knew your words. You got to go home at 6:00 like everybody else. Every other TV show I ever worked on, you're working till 11 and you're back in at 6 a.m. And no, but he loved his crew. They had families. He had family. So everybody got, he worked it just so that everybody got to go home on time, and they were fairly treated and well paid. And, I can't say enough about him. Yeah. I miss him terribly. It was a terrible shock.
When I was doing research, at least in Twin Peaks, it seems like you were always able to make suggestions and shape your character a little bit. Did you do that?
I had a few ideas, which they were, agreeable to. The one that's so funny that I never told them about was the when I wore the happy face button to Laura Palmer's funeral.
That's great.
Nobody on the show noticed at all.
Isn't that something?
Everybody was too involved with, the funeral scene was the whole cast plus a whole bunch of extras. The episode where they had Laura Palmer's funeral was, several months into the show itself. So, people were paying attention to other things, and I wore this big yellow happy face on my suit, but the fans picked it up. I started getting, happy face everything, happy face cards. And so I do, when I go on these shows, the Great Southern, I always bring a big bag of happy face buttons and give them out.
That's so nice.
Because, you're never fully dressed unless you're wearing a smile.
You didn't have to actually interview for Betty Briggs. Do you remember how that came about?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. I didn't have to interview at all. I had done Eraserhead with David, so he knew me, and my roommate at the time, I was sharing a house with Jack Nance, and who discovered she's dead, wrapped in
Pete Martell,
Pete Martell. So David came to dinner one night and told us about the show, which then was called Northwest Passage. And because there had been another show called Northwest Passage, they decided to change it to Twin Peaks, so there was no confusion.
Yeah.
But yeah, I knew I was playing Betty Briggs. I didn't know what that meant. I was totally surprised when I met Don Davis, who plays my husband, Major Briggs. Somehow I thought he would be this big, tall, handsome guy. And here's this kind of slightly rounded, redhead, middle-aged guy. And I misjudged him completely. Don Davis was, God rest his soul, he was one of the more interesting men I have ever met.
Yeah.
He was a painter. He was a teacher. He became a very good friend.
Yeah.
And I miss him too. Too many of my friends have gone.
Yeah. Mentioning Don Davis, I have a couple quotes that he says about you. He says, every time I got to be with Charlotte was one of the best days of my life. One of the nicest people he had ever met in his life. And that's you.
Well, I think the same thing about him.
Oh.
He was just a real sweetheart.
Yeah. And mentioning that first dinner where you found out about having that part, I believe it was David Lynch's birthday, and he had invited Kyle MacLachlan, Laura Dern, Mark Frost, and you, I believe, for dinner.
Yes, we were at a restaurant, and it was a very small dinner party. Mark Frost and, like you say, David, Laura Dern, and Kyle, and Jack Nance and myself, and it was very kind of intimate. And at the time, I wondered what they were talking about. I already knew we were going to do Twin Peaks. But at the time, Kyle and Laura and David Lynch were looking down the table at me and then looking at each other and then looking at me. And I found out later they were thinking of having me play Laura Dern's mother in, was it Wild at Heart? Laura Dern's real mother ended up playing her mother.
Right, that's correct.
They were looking at me to play her mother. I didn't know that until much later, but I thought, what are they talking about? But, yeah. No, her mother played it. It was much better in it than I would have been.
Oh, I think you would have done a great job with that.
Thanks.
It's true.
Yeah.
And at that dinner, I think Lynch had said everybody would get a part in Twin Peaks. And it's interesting. I think he was even talking about Laura Dern. And it's funny that we now know from Showtime that Laura Dern will be in the new series.
Yeah,
so it's
cool.
funny. It took 25 years for her to be a part of it.
I didn't know that. I know so little about the show.
How did you find out about the new series on Showtime? Did David Lynch contact you?
Yes, as a matter of fact, early last year, I got a phone call. It was David calling directly, and he said, "Char, you ready to go to work?"
Nice, love it.
It couldn't have been better timing. You know, I didn't know. I hadn't worked in a while, and I had moved up to Napa in the North California area. And, you know, at this age in my life and this age in my career, I didn't even know if I'd work again. So it was a blessing. And he also gave me a nice quote for my book. I don't know if you noticed on the back. He called me up and he said, "Char, you got a pencil?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Okay, write this down." And then he wrote down the quote. He said, "Okay, read it back to me." I read it back to him.
And I've got
that was my quote.
I've got your quote. So, Charlotte Stewart is my kind of girl, a talented, courageous actress, a loyal friend, and one who brings happiness to work.
Happiness to the set.
Yeah, to the set.
Happiness to work.
Yeah. Isn't that something? A while ago, I used to think, oh, you must have been a student with David Lynch. But no, you 15 years before Eraserhead, you've been working in television and film. And so what made you decide to do Eraserhead?
Well, back in the day and still, you know, as of today, I will always work for a student filmmaker. You know, I don't care if it pays or not or whatever, but time I had done several student films for, you know, USC students and UCLA and all. I got a call. My roommate at the time was working with Jack Fisk as a volunteer at AFI, American Film Institute. And she came home and she said, "There's this student director who's looking for an actress." And I told him my roommate's an actress. And he said, "Great." So he came to dinner with his wife, Peggy, and he brought the script, and I was cast as Mariette. So I was doing the Waltons at the time. And then I started Little House on the Prairie right after that. But, you know, you probably know about Eraserhead. It took about 4 years to shoot, about 4 years to edit. And so for the next 4 years, I was in and out of Little House on the Prairie, Miss Beadle costumes, and back into Mariette. So I never expected that. And then when the movie was released, or before it was released, he showed it to us at AFI, and it was about, I think at the time it was about 2.5 hours long.
Wow.
And he said, "What do you think?" David, I think it's like a toothache. It hurts so bad.
Wow.
He said, "Swell."
That's funny. Could you talk about, there was actually some cut scenes from Eraserhead, and one of them you had actually you had made a body cast.
I did, and I've got a little bit of a short story to tell you about that. But yes, he had in mind to shoot a scene where Henry, in the middle of the night, pushes on Mary's stomach and breaks through into her womb and finds all these fetuses. And so he had. This was before we started shooting. I had to go to his house, lay down on a cot or a bed, and he painted me with this moulage. It's called. It's like a rubber kind of rubberized mixture, and then plaster of Paris cast. And this was from just below my chin all the way down to my pubic hair.
Oh my!
Naked. I didn't know David. I had my roommate with me there, Doreen.
Wow.
And we had to do that. And, you know, I mean, I just went ahead and did it. You know, well, And it turned out he couldn't use it. The effect didn't work very good. So he gave me the cast. I have it to this day.
To this day. Isn't that
That's
something?
cool.
I have it hanging in my bedroom. And when I was just up in North Bend to shoot the new Twin Peaks, I finished my day of shooting, and I went over to give him a hug goodbye, and he says to the entire room, crew, and everybody, you know, I had Charlotte naked in my bed.
Wow.
And I just looked at him and smiled. And we just left it at that.
Oh.
See, I was a bad girl.
Yes.
I guess you were. No. There was another deleted scene that you were on roller skates for like a special effect.
Yes, there was a special effect that he wanted where Mary flew through the room with her nightgown flying behind her, and it was like a dream sequence. Well, hell, all of Eraserhead is like a dream sequence.
Yeah.
But he wanted the special effect, and the room was so tiny. And the only way he could think of to do it was put me on roller skates and put a rope around my waist under my robe or whatever and pull me really quick through the room. But it didn't work either.
Yeah, you tried. I'm still amazed.
He tried.
I'm amazed you were doing Little House on the Prairie in the daytime, and then at nighttime you'd be doing Eraserhead. I don't know how you got enough sleep.
I quite often didn't.
Yeah.
Quite often we would finish before dawn at the AFI, and then I would jump in my car and drive to Paramount Studios to do Little House. And I didn't let them know that I was doing the student film because they, you know, my first job was to be ready and alert for. But it happened once on the Waltons when I was doing that episode that I came in after having no sleep and completely blew my lines. I mean, I was apologizing all over the place, but I couldn't think straight. So, you know, it's just one of those things you have to deal with, you know, once you agree to do something like that.
And you're human. I think everybody is allowed to have a bad day. What a great performance you did of Mary. I mean, what I loved about your performance is sometimes you didn't have to say anything. It was just the way you looked or had seizures or just the way you acted was incredible. And then other times you would explode and you'd be angry. And I mean, to go from these different ranges, I think you did an incredible job on that film.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. You know, there wasn't a lot of direction as far as character or, you know, emotions or anything. David seemed to be more interested in the visual look of what was happening. You know, he would direct position of the body or something. He's a painter. It's my opinion that he, more than filmed it, he painted Eraserhead. And I tell people when they say, what was it about? Tell me what the story was. I say, no, I can't. Because what you need to do is go to the movie like you're going to the Museum of Art and stand in front of it and just let it wash over you. You don't have to know what it all means.
That's true.
And that's my opinion. And, you know, David will never explain it.
It's a good thing. He never does.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's probably what I love about him. That is, totally.
Yeah.
So back at Twin Peaks, one of my favorite scenes that you were in from the show was this time where you were with Bobby and Major Briggs comes back, and right before he comes back, Bobby talks about how he talks about how his dad had a dream about him, and then you go and say, when I sleep at night, he would run his fingers through my hair. He didn't think I noticed, but I did.
I know. Wasn't that sweet?
Oh, it's so beautiful. It's so something.
It was so sweet. And I think it's one of the few times in the whole series that you see that there was a love story. You know, you don't have to spell it out. You could see it in, you know, the way she was worrying and frantic that he was gone, but there was so much she didn't know about what Major Briggs did. You know, it was all very secretive.
Right.
And but you could see the love there. And there was one shot in the diner too that we're together when we just have our arms around each other, and that was it. It was a private moment.
The final episode.
Yeah, it's the final episode. We have to give you credit that you have a lot to do with that scene with Bobby, where I think you went to the director and said, "Hey, you know, Major Briggs and I do have a very close, loving relationship, and we should play it this way." And I think you had a lot to say about that scene.
I did in one scene. David wasn't there; he wasn't directing.
I think it was Deschanel.
Yeah, I think it was. I was in the scene, and it didn't make sense to me that Betty wouldn't know that he had a secret, you know, life. She had to be a part of that. And so I said, this dialogue doesn't make any sense. And they said, well, we'll have to go talk to the writers. So, the writer came down, and I said, it seems to me Betty would know not what specifically he was doing, that it was secret. And anything she knows, she can't talk about.
Yeah.
And they went, you're right. So that's
I love
how
that.
that scene ended
Well,
up.
thank you for your contribution and sharing that, because I do think that makes her a fuller character. That
Yeah.
she's not a dimwit. She's not naive. She knows what's going on.
Yeah.
No.
And what was it like working with Elvis in Speedaway?
Well, I write about it in the book, because how could I not? I only saw him. I was only there 2 days, but he was a perfect gentleman. I think he and Priscilla had just gotten married, or not too long before. It was, there were only two of us in the scene, the woman that's in the car with him and me. I was the drive-in waitress. And between takes, there's a lot of time where you just sit. And he got me a chair. He pulled it up beside his chair. He took my hand and he talked about his mother. He told me about Gladys. And and how, when he was in the Army and they wouldn't let him come see her when she was ill. And he just kept talking about his mom. And I kept sitting there thinking, holy shit, Elvis is holding my hand.
Wow.
That's cool.
Your book is also about survival. Do you want to share anything about that? I mean, you've had some difficult times in life.
I have, as I'm sure many people have had difficult times in their life. And I just hope that maybe when someone reads this, they'll find out that, there's places to go for help, without being specific.
Right.
I always say I'm one of the luckiest people on earth, that I've been through a lot of experiences and lived through it. And today I'm a newlywed.
Congratulations.
Wow.
Thank you. I just got married to my dear Michael. Michael Santos is my husband, who's sitting beside me right now. And we got married August 30th of last year. And my life is so full right now, with everything that's going on in his life and his work and my life and my work. I'm just very fortunate.
Yeah.
I did what I did, and I learned my lessons, and I don't regret anything. And if this is of any help to anybody else, God bless them.
God bless them. And you seem like a better person through it all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, here we are. I'm 75 and a newlywed and off on a new adventure with that book.
Oh,
that's awesome.
Cool. And so you're going to be at the Great Southern June 9th through the 12th in Richmond, Virginia.
Yes. I will.
Yeah, and you were there last year. How did you get involved with the Great Southern?
Well, Andrew Blossom is the, director of the show. I had met him at one of the Twin Peaks festivals, and he sent me a very nice letter and said, would I be willing to come? And I said, yes. We had a great time. I'm going to be signing books there and at the show and at the festival.
And so you'll be doing a reading from your memoir. Have you decided
yet
which
I haven't
one
decided which one yet.
Yeah.
I imagine it should be about Twin Peaks, don't you think?
Well, we probably would like that.
Maybe, yeah.
Honestly, you could read the telephone book, and I'd be interested in listening to you. So.
You are so sweet.
But it's true.
I'll bring a telephone book along just in case.
The only other thing I was going to ask you about is I don't know if you would have remembered anything from Fire Walk with Me. There actually was a scene between you and Don Davis, and you're in the living room, and Major Briggs is reading from the Bible, and
he's reading from the Bible, and we're listening to opera.
And how was that? It was probably like maybe a one-day shoot.
It was one day, yeah. It was, as you know, that Fire Walk with Me was a prequel, and there was one brief scene, but then it was cut out of the movie. But now I understand it's back in.
Yeah, I just rewatched it. It's in the Missing Pieces, the Blu-ray. There's actually that scene, so it's wonderful to actually get to see your performance.
Oh, all I did was listen to Don read the Bible.
Yeah, and I think you answered the door to Laura, and she says, "Oh, Bobby's downstairs in the basement." So I think you had like one line or something. But it's still great to see you on film. And
Thank you.
Would you share anything about your Catherine Coulson and Jack Nance? I mean, these are longtime friends of yours. I know, unfortunately, have passed away.
Yes, Catherine and I became friends. Well, Catherine and Jack and I became friends when we did Eraserhead, but she and I really became close friends when we worked on on Twin Peaks together. And then I've known her through the years. We've stayed in touch. In fact, she did give me a call last summer to say she had lung cancer. She just wanted me to know.
Yeah.
And then I saw her at the Twin Peaks Fest, her last appearance there. And she was quite ill, but she was so gracious and so available to all the fans. I just admired her. So, you know what?
Yeah.
Catherine Coulson made me a better friend.
Oh,
Just knowing her made me a better friend.
Oh.
And, you know, her passing. So I'm going to get emotional.
Yeah.
And I miss her terribly.
Oh, she is so sweet. I mean, that same time that she was at that festival, I reached out to her and I said, "Oh, would you mind being on the show?" And I said, we asked for like 10 minutes of your time, and she gave us 10 minutes. And at the time, I didn't know she was sick, and
Yeah, it was great.
I don't know if I was sick, if I would want to do anything. So for her to be able to give that time, and she seemed like such a wonderful lady. I mean,
yes,
something else.
That's true. That is very true.
And Jack Nance, your roommate, what was it? Was it like living with him?
Well, Jack, when he came back from doing Blue Velvet, he was in really bad shape, and so Dennis Hopper flew with him back to Los Angeles and drove him directly to a rehab center.
Wow.
And so when Jack got out, or when I heard he was getting out, I called him up. And I said, how are you doing? What are you doing? Do you need a place to live? And he did. And my roommate had just moved out to get married. I said, Jack, I got a 2-bedroom house here. Why don't you come over? And so he did. He moved in, and then we were roommates until he married Kelly. And then I got married at the time too, my dear departed David. But Jack and I were best friends. Shared a lot of crazy experiences. I may tell a story about Jack. Yeah, I think that's what I'll do for the book, because I've got a couple of funny ones.
That'd be something.
Yeah.
He seems like such a character. I mean, I think I read somewhere where he sometimes would take a long time to say something, and you guys did would be on the radio, and the DJ or the guy would interrupt him because he thinks he was done talking or something.
Yes, that happened. Well, God, I can't remember the name of the 2 DJs. They were in L.A. When Twin Peaks was on. They were just huge fans, and they had us on their show. And Jack would go to tell a story, and they would just come in with another question, because he takes so long.
Yeah.
He takes so long. In fact, there's a scene in Wild at Heart. I believe it's Wild at Heart, where it takes place at a motel, and he's there and he talks about his dog.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do. I remember
My
that.
dog.
The dog. Thank you, Charlotte, for your time. And I'm so excited. Your book comes out June 1st. Little House in the Hollywood Hills, A Bad Girl's Guide to Becoming Miss Beadle, Mary X, and Me.
Correct.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome, both of you. Thank you. And I'll see you in Richmond, Virginia next month.
And thank you again to our guest, Charlotte Stewart. It was awesome to hear those amazing stories. And it's amazing that we got a chance to talk to her while she was on the side of a highway. So that was really cool that she gave us 30 minutes of her time while driving. So
she did pull over.
She wasn't,
Yes.
So she's a sweetheart for doing that. So we appreciate that. And we get to meet her, and we get to meet a lot of people who we've had on the show over the last year at the Great Southern.
Yeah, that'll be really exciting. And she's gonna be reading from her memoir, which is Little House in the Hollywood Hills, which you can get on Amazon.
Yes.
It'll come out June 1st. But that's really gonna be exciting. And she'll be part of that writer's panel with a lot of our friends.
And on top of that, we will do our best to record as much as possible. So if you cannot make it for whatever reason, keep us bookmarked at TwinPeaksUnwrapped.com. Subscribe to us on iTunes, rate us, comment, but keep us to your ears this June, because we're going to have everything as much as we can. If you can't go, we will bring the Great Southern to you.
Yeah,
I'd
like to see you there. I mean, it'd be kind of cool that we're going to be there, and I hope we can see a lot of the other community members.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun.
Yeah, so we'll be back again next Wednesday.
Every Wednesday. TwinPeaksUnwrapped.com. You can send us an email, twinpeaksunwrapped@gmail.com. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. Twin Peaks Unwrapped. Just look us up. We're there. And we're going to leave you with a little bit of Charlotte Stewart from Twin Peaks.
Sounds good.
Sometimes when I'm sleeping, he runs his fingers through my hair. He thinks I don't notice that.
Strange. Seemed much shorter.